She didn't knock. She never knocked. She just appeared at my porch like a storm that had been building all week, clutching a stack of papers so tight her knuckles had gone white. I was grilling. Burgers, medium rare, nothing fancy. The kind of Saturday afternoon that's supposed to be quiet. But Karen had other plans. She shoved those papers toward my face, voice already at a 10, rattling off words like violation and unacceptable and this neighborhood has standards. I flipped a burger. She got louder. I reached for my lemonade. She got louder still. Here's the thing about Karen. She had spent years believing that a laminated HOA badge made her untouchable, that nobody would ever push back, that the rules she invented were the rules everyone had to live by. She was about to learn otherwise. And the person who was going to teach her that lesson? She had already dialed their number. Karen hadn't always been like this. Or maybe she had. Nobody really knew. What the neighborhood did know was that the moment she was handed a position on the HOA board, something shifted inside her. A little bit of fake authority, it turns out, is a dangerous thing in the wrong hands. She once issued a formal written warning to the elderly widow on Maple Street, not for anything serious, not for anything dangerous, but for wind chimes. Wind chimes. The kind that makes that soft, gentle sound on a summer breeze. Karen called them an acoustic disturbance. The widow cried. The neighborhood talked. Karen took notes. Then there was the Johnson family, cited for parking their minivan 2 inches over the driveway line. And the teenager down the block who got a notice for drawing chalk animals on his own sidewalk. Chalk. That washes off in the rain. The irony in all of this. I wasn't even part of the HOA. Never signed anything. Never attended a meeting. My property predated their little organization by a decade. Their rules, their notices, their laminated badges, none of it applied to me. Karen, unfortunately, hadn't accepted that yet. The first notice appeared on a Tuesday. Unsigned, printed in bold, slid under my front door like it was a ransom letter. It cited my patio furniture as visually disruptive to community aesthetics. I read it twice, laughed once, and used it as a coaster. The second one came 3 days later, this time with underlining and italics, and a hand-drawn arrow pointing to the word warning as if I might miss it. It accused my garden hose of being improperly stored. I tucked it into my recycling bin and made myself a sandwich. By the fifth notice, Karen had discovered the caps lock key and clearly had no intention of letting it go. Final warning: remove patio furniture or face legal consequences. I framed it, hung it right next to my front door. Guests thought it was modern art, but the notices weren't even the best part. Karen had taken her campaign to the streets. Literally. She was stopping joggers, chatting up dog walkers, whispering to anyone who would listen that I was dragging the neighborhood down. One afternoon, she handed a violation flyer to my neighbor's 10-year-old, who promptly turned it into a paper airplane and launched it into a puddle. Then came the notice that changed the tone entirely. No more caps lock, no more hand-drawn arrows, just 7 cold, deliberate words at the bottom of the page. Further non-compliance will result in police intervention. She wasn't just annoyed anymore. She was planning something. I decided to show up, not because I was worried, not because I felt obligated, but because there is something deeply satisfying about walking into a room where someone expects you to be afraid, and simply not being afraid. Karen arrived like she was accepting an award, shoulders back, folder tucked under her arm, reading glasses perched at the edge of her nose like a judge about to deliver a verdict. She scanned the room, spotted me, and her eyes narrowed just slightly. Good. She knew I was there to fight back. When my turn came, I kept it simple. I presented the zoning documentation. I showed my property records. I explained clearly and calmly that my land predated the HOA's incorporation, and that I had never signed their agreement, never accepted their jurisdiction, and had absolutely zero legal obligation to follow their notices. The room went quiet. A couple of board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Karen slammed her folder shut and told me I had 2 weeks to come into compliance or face removal. I picked up my papers, thanked the board for their time, and walked out. That evening, I told my wife everything. She listened without interrupting, stirring her tea slowly, expression unreadable. When I finished, she set the cup down, looked at me, and said it so quietly it almost sounded gentle. Let her push it. She won't like what happens next. I didn't ask her to explain. I didn't need to. She didn't wait for the 2 weeks to expire. She showed up 2 days later like she'd been counting down the hours, fist hammering on my door before I'd even finished my morning coffee. I opened it slowly. She was red-faced, breathless, vibrating with the kind of energy that only comes from someone who has convinced themselves they are the hero of a story they completely misunderstood. She jabbed a finger at my chest and told me my time was up. I leaned against the doorframe and told her politely that she might want to lower her voice. She raised it instead. I took a sip of coffee. She took out her phone. I watched her dial 911 with the focused intensity of someone defusing a bomb in reverse. She reported me as if I were a fugitive. Illegal property violations, neighborhood endangerment, a threat to community safety. I stood there holding my mug, wondering if she could hear how absurd it sounded out loud. Apparently not. Neighbors had started drifting toward the street by now. Curtains pulled back. A few people stepped onto their porches, arms folded, watching. Karen noticed the audience and straightened up, chin lifted, satisfied. She hung up the phone and looked at me with a smile that said she had finally, irrevocably won. Then, faintly, from somewhere down the road came the sound of sirens. She smiled like someone who had just checkmated, not realizing she'd handed me the board. The patrol car rolled up slowly and deliberately, the way authority tends to move when it has nothing to prove. Karen smoothed her blouse, lifted her chin, and clasped her hands together like a woman about to receive a trophy she'd been chasing for years. The neighbors on the porches leaned forward. Nobody wanted to miss this. The door swung open. Out stepped my wife. Full uniform, badge catching the morning light like it was put there on purpose. She had that walk, the kind that doesn't hurry, doesn't hesitate, doesn't explain itself. The kind of walk that makes a crowd go quiet without a single word being spoken. Karen didn't recognize her. Of course, she didn't. She stepped forward immediately, pointing at me with the conviction of someone who had rehearsed this moment in her bathroom mirror. Officer, thank goodness. That man right there, arrest him. Violations, disturbances. He's been ignoring every notice. My wife didn't even glance at her. She walked straight past Karen like she was a lamppost, stepped up onto the porch, looked at me with those calm, familiar eyes, and pulled me into an embrace that felt like the end of a long week. Then she kissed me. Slow, unhurried, and completely unbothered by the audience. The crowd reacted before Karen did. Laughter rippled down the street. Someone actually applauded. Karen made a sound I can only describe as a kettle discovering it has no water. She spun toward my wife, sputtering, demanding an explanation. My wife turned to face her then, fully, professionally. The smile was gone. She walked through every complaint Karen had filed, each one dismissed with a statute, a fact, or a simple truth Karen had never bothered to learn. Then she delivered the closing line with the quiet finality of someone who never needs to raise their voice. Call 911 for this again, and you'll be the one in handcuffs. Karen left the way all paper tigers do, quietly, quickly, and without making eye contact with anyone. No folder, no finger pointing, no parting speech. Just the sound of her footsteps retreating down the driveway while the neighbors watched in the kind of satisfied silence that doesn't need words. By afternoon, the street was back to normal. Kids were riding bikes. My neighbor waved from his porch. My wife sat beside me with her coffee, badge still on, completely unbothered, like she hadn't just dismantled a one-woman HOA dictatorship before lunchtime. Life, it turns out, is pretty peaceful when the right person has your back. Last I heard, Karen submitted a noise complaint about her own wind chimes. Some people never learn. If you think she got exactly what she deserved, drop a comment below and tell me. Like and subscribe for more stories where justice actually shows up, sometimes in a patrol car.